Hey guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Croissant. Today we're going to be talking about the book Digital Minimalism by Newport. It's a really interesting book and I think it's actually incredibly relevant, especially within today, especially how just active technology is ever present, social media and everything in terms of how it's distracting you from productivity, anything like that. So if you're an individual who personally struggles with maybe general distractions from social media, technology, entertainment, anything like that, and you feel as if you're lacking productivity or it's something that you definitely need to address, I highly suggest you watch the rest of this summary, apply some of the different actions that it utilizes towards helping coming over that issue, and also maybe read the book yourself because there's definitely a lot more in depth about it that you won't be able to get in a 10-minute video. So if you do implement your own system, if you don't implement your own system, you always end up with a poor one or one that serves someone else's purpose. This talks about essentially your day-to-day routine, maybe your business's CRM, anything like that. Any type of system that you haven't somewhat tweaked or designed through yourself to optimize your personal performance, you're obviously going to lack a level of tailoring and personalization towards your lifestyle. For example, if your schedule is constantly written out by your boss, there's going to always be certain aspects that you might not necessarily be able to communicate with him. That's a part of your day. So you might be losing certain times with your family, your kids, and it might be sacrificing your values, rules, or beliefs that you have for yourself. But if you optimize and create your own one, not only can you maximize on the things that you do value outside of work or working towards whatever your long-term goal is, but you can also effectively balance it. So the book suggests a 30-day decluster and a set of practices to help sustain a dietal, minimalistic lifestyle. So a 30-day decluster, it legitimately is exactly what it's talking about. So identifying the technology and optional technologies that you use throughout your day-to-day life and legitimately completely erasing it from your usage for 30 days. Now I know that does seem extreme, but as you go through the book, you can actually understand why it is so important and how it actually addresses addiction in general and essentially utilizes and views this genuine thing that so many people are using every single day as a problem, because for the most part it might be, depending on your situation. So the definition of digital minimalization is a philosophy in which you focus your life on your long-term goal and any small number, carefully selected, optimized activities that strongly suggest and support the things that you value, and then happily taking out of them, and so that you don't miss out on anything else. So basically it talks about understanding what is optional, the optional technologies that you have to basically apply within your life, and then essentially taking that out so you can maximize the time that you can spend on the things that you do enjoy and everything else that you normally would miss out on if you weren't spending this time. So the book has 3 principles that it goes over, and I'll go in depth to explain. The first one is cluster is costly. Principle 2 is optimization is important, and principle 3 is intentionality is satisfying. So let's talk about the first one for a little bit. Cluster is costly, yes. If you've ever met someone who has so much on their plate or so many distractions that are occurring, you'll notice that it's very difficult to get things done. If you ever grew up in a large family looking towards doing assessment work before its due date, especially if you were procrastinating before that deadline, and yet all of a sudden you have all these responsibilities that you have to basically maintain and do, it makes doing the assessment in a accordingly time very difficult. You're normally distracted by your family, distracted by your siblings, distracted by dinner, doing your basically daily tasks. And this is exactly what is happening to us whenever we're utilizing our phones, electronics, and social media in general. The amount of times most people are spending nowadays isn't with their kids, isn't in sport, it isn't even in front of the TV anymore. It's scrolling social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, you name it, people are scrolling. That's majority of the time people are spending their downtime at the moment. And it's costly. It's just how cluster is costly. Something that is consistently distracting you from the goal that you're trying to achieve is of course going to affect you in a negative light. So you have to look towards it at first, identifying that, and then identifying the clutter that's in your life, and obviously declutter it. Figure out time schedules, and I'll go a little bit more into that later on. But that's what clutter is. Anything that distracts you consistently, that is a level out of your control of your environment. So as long as it's around you, it's going to distract you. It's not whether or not you've placed it in your environment or not, but it's there and it's distracting you. That's what clutter is. The next one is optimization is important. This one is very obvious, especially if you understand, let's say you do have a laptop at home. Of course you want it to be optimized and running at the best of its ability. You wouldn't want unnecessary viruses, apps, or anything that's going to slow up the presentation or productive reasons why you bought the laptop in order to get the job that you need done. Of course you'd defragment it or whatever if you knew that it was simple and you knew how. Well, that's just like our lives. If you didn't want an unoptimizable laptop in your life, why would you want an unoptimized lifestyle? And that's exactly what the book talks about. Understanding that an optimized life means that you're working efficiently towards the goal that you're looking towards achieve, values and beliefs. So of course you want to always have things that are working streamlined towards making sure that you can live in abundance of the things that you do care about. So the principle 3 is intentionality is satisfying. Intentionality means when you have the intention in order to do stuff and you have it set out and you do achieve it, of course it's going to feel satisfying. But that's the same way when it comes to downtime and entertainment and maybe things that you might not necessarily be indulging in as much as you are. For example, social media. If you delegate a certain time or put it as a certain reward that it's only accessible during certain hours of the day, then of course you're going to value it more. And in fact, studies have shown it's so present when it's in sport. Seeing as though so many times when you're spending time with your kids, it's normally during an afternoon in the outdoors, there's always going to be a lot of time where you can only spend that amount of time. And all of a sudden, that time becomes quality. You value it more because there's less of it. Well, that same thing and same philosophy and same, phenomenon can also happen when you're utilizing it in order to deal with your social media or general electronic addiction. And I understand addiction might be a little bit hard to comprehend, or it might even slightly be offensive, but the book highlights that an addiction is anything that you don't necessarily need to do, but use it as if it's a necessity. And if that's the case, then you should probably reevaluate your life, which brings us to how. So the first one is define what technologies are optional to you. Write out standard operating procedures and handling these optional technologies with optional aspects. So I'll break that down in the simplest form I can. Identify the things that are optional, the things that aren't necessary in order for your work or in order for you to just generally operate throughout life. Make sure that you have your income. Whatever those is, write a list. And then basically schedule in an operating system for each of those optional parts. So for example, a TV. Generally speaking, I'd argue 9 out of 10 people don't need a TV. It's not necessary, chances are. Okay, so a standard operating procedure would be, I can only use it between the hours of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. when this and this show is on, or this and this time to play my video games or play with my son or play with your daughter on the TV, utilizing the TV unit. That's a standing operating procedure. So essentially you're allotting time, prerequisites in order for it to be used. Just like how if you were playing a sport, you could only play that sport at certain times of the week because only certain times are the game that you could basically play in. Like basketball, for example, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, there is a lot of times for these indulgent activities, and that's the same way and the problem that technology doesn't. It's so readily available. You can always utilize a technology, whereas others' entertainment values always have restricted and a lot of time frames. For the most part, for most people, it's not as easily or readily accessible. The second principle is how to stop using optional technology for 30 days. Now this is the tough one. So it talks about a cleanse, sort of like if you were to start a diet or something like that. You sort of do it cold turkey for an extended period of time and then ease back. Now I understand that might be extreme, especially if you're a social media junkie. Deleting all of your apps or literally downgrading your phone might seem extreme, but what that'll do is essentially realize that it's not necessary. It will give you the realization that these types of technologies that you've once took for a necessity realistically aren't. Now, I understand that might be difficult if you run a business and you do utilize a social media aspect. For average person, social media is optional. It is not something that is necessary for day-to-day life. They don't need to have it. So taking away for 30 days, although tough, might very well make you understand not only valuing it more, but recognizing how much you just were on it. It's sort of like if you've ever had your water turned off in your house. You all of a sudden realize how reliant you are on water when it comes to flushing the toilet, when it comes to washing the dishes, when it comes to washing your hands. All those simplistic tasks all of a sudden become a lot harder. Well, that same type of experience would happen if you look towards deleting it out of your life for 30 days. Now, step 3 is basically evaluate the 30 days and understand how you went. Okay, and then look towards slowly reintroducing the optional technologies based on these 2 questions. That first question is, does this technology directly support something that I deeply value? And number 2, does this technology best support that deeply value in the best proper way? Basically, I'll paint this, for example, does this technology, does it aid in something that you do personally believe in or hold dear? Okay, if that's true, then number 2, is the best way to hold that value dear. I'll explain that further. If you really value sport, let's say basketball, and you really value watching the NBA, of course the way that you need to do this is go towards utilizing your phone or utilizing your TV to watch the games. That obviously does value your thing very deeply. It allows you to exercise your right towards watching it very simply. But looking towards the second aspect of the question is it the best way to honor it? Well, technically not. The best way to honor it would be going to the game. So, based on that, why not utilize the second option rather than just using your phone? And so on and so on and so on and so on. And you basically identify what's easier, what's optional, and what's the best way to apply according to your values and beliefs, and then judge and plan out your life accordingly. And then from there, maintain this lifestyle. Now, I understand it's tough, I understand it's difficult, and relapses are going to happen. But what's important is reviewing your schedule, writing out what it is that you value, because remember, you've set up a standing operating system for each and every activity, therefore you have a level of accountability towards yourself. I understand the 30 days would be hard. Do it. I highly suggest you do it. You will 100% value technology more and value the time that you have free far more. And it's definitely going to be ever valuable, especially if you're an individual who values quality time with loved ones, business, or anything that's looking towards becoming more productive towards your goals. Anyways, guys, I highly suggest you read the rest of the book because there's so much more in-depth knowledge about it that I definitely think you could take away. But other than that, I really hope you do apply it and you basically look towards decluttering your lifestyle and achieving things that you truly want out of life. That was it for Quick Notes with Chris on. I'll see you guys in the next one.